Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Metabolism and Menopause podcast. My name is Stephanie, and I am your host and CEO of Vitality OET. We are a women's nutrition, health, and fitness company that focuses predominantly on women's hormones, particularly as they start going through perimenopause and onwards. We know that you start experiencing so many changes in this time of your life, whether that be hot flashes, night sweats, irritability, brain fog, or weight gain around the middle that seems to have come out of absolutely nowhere despite you not changing anything. So you go back to those tried and true methods of cutting calories, cutting carbs, doing a bunch of cardio, yet nothing seems to be working. In fact, it feels like you're putting in all this effort and you're actually moving backwards. But we know now that your body is inherently different now that you've gone through these hormonal changes. So our mission here at Vitality is to really help you understand how your body changes in this time of your life, so you can reach those health and fitness goals, feel at home and in control in your body again, live a life full of vitality, and really understand how to take care of this new body of yours. So today, hopefully my voice doesn't run out. I just taught a workshop for a bunch of coaches, so that's always lots of fun. And now I get to teach all of you. And today what I wanted to talk about is the vagus nerve and how that actually affects your ability to lose weight, how it affects your hormones, your stress response when you're going through all these hormonal struggles, whether you're starting perimenopause or trying to be proactive, or you're already in menopause or postmenopause. The vagus nerve is really important to understand what it does, because its relationship with cortisol and hormones is so important that once you understand this, a lot of things will start clicking for you. So I'm going to talk about all the stress type stuff, all the vagus type nerve stuff. So the first thing is, okay, what is the vagus nerve, right? That's always a question. Why should I care about it? Why does this matter for hormones and perimenopause and menopause and weight gain and all those things? Like, it's a nerve, right? Well, the vagus nerve is in fact a nerve. You figured that out correctly. And it is part of our cranial nerves. Cranial nerves are paired nerves in the back of your brain. And we have 12 of them in total. So their job is to really send signals between your brain, face, neck, and torso. And our cranial nerves also help us with taste, smell, hearing, feeling, all those kinds of sensations. And all of those 12 nerves are going to play different roles when it comes to our body. So one is responsible for sense of smell. Another one is responsible for just the movement of our tongue and being able to talk. The majority of our cranial nerves are going to play a role in facial function and our ability to use our eyes, our nose, our mouth. However, the 10th cranial nerve, the vagus nerve, is the longest nerve in our body. It is called the vagus nerve because vagus is a Latin word for wandering, and it is the only one of our cranial nerves to move throughout our torso. So that's a pretty big deal. It's the longest nerve in our body, so it's probably pretty important, right? So this vagus nerve is going to exit from our brainstem, and it goes to the body's primary internal organs, like our heart, our liver, our stomach, our spleen, pancreas, and gut. So you can imagine the vagus nerve has a lot of influence on our health and how our body functions if it's innervating all those areas, right? And it wanders through our body kind of like a net. So it's not just this one skinny nerve. It really does expand and cover a very large area. It's considered to be bidirectional. So what that means is it allows the brain to communicate with the organs, so the heart, the liver, the stomach, but also the other way around. Those organs and our body can actually send signals to our brain to tell us about what state our body is in. In fact, 80% of the nerves communicate messages back to the brain. So the vagus nerve, unlike other areas of our body, the brain is always sending signals out, right? But this vagus nerve in particular, 80% of its role is to provide the brain with information about the state of our body. Okay, so this is where I feel like I'm handling things fine, but your body is telling you a different story. This is what's happening. The vagus nerve is telling your brain that you are in fact not fine, okay? So it acts like a portal to the brain almost from the rest of our body. It really does communicate. And its other job that it does is it activates the parasympathetic part of our nervous system. And what that is the opposite of fight or flight. It is the rest and digest, the relax, the feeling grounded, anti-anxiety side of our nervous system, which a lot of us don't experience that feeling calm and relaxed. And, we're not struggling with bloating and digestion, right? Most of us are stuck in that fight or flight side. So that tells us our vagus nerve really isn't getting utilized the way it should be, because if it was, we would feel a lot better. We would feel healthier. We would actually be okay. When we say, oh, I'm fine, you actually would be fine, but your body is not fine. So you can almost think of that vagus nerve as like a 2-lane highway, right? So a little bit of communication, a little bit of traffic from the brain to the rest of our body. And then there is a lot of traffic and a lot of noise and a lot of signaling going from our body back up to the brain, okay? The responses that our body feels are sent to the brain, and the brain responds with certain hormones and certain neurotransmitters. So this is where I always tell you guys, I'm going to say this a million times today, where you're like, I'm fine. My stress used to be worse. I've learned how to handle it. This is just normal. No, you are telling yourself that. You are thinking those things, but your body is sending a different signal to your brain, and this is why you are struggling with your weight, your energy, your blood sugar control, your hormonal symptoms, your ability to sleep, all of these things, because of what your vagus nerve is taking from our body and giving that information to our brain, okay? So when it comes to how our body kind of interprets that information that it's receiving, it can respond in 2 ways. So one, with that sympathetic nervous system response, the fight or flight or freeze, right? It's what helps keep us safe. When our fight or flight side of our nervous system is on, it's preparing the body for action to fight this bear or run away from this bear, right? You've probably heard me say that before. It's very much a fear-based reaction that responds to rising levels of adrenaline, noradrenaline, and of course, cortisol, right? So during a acute stress response, so you see a snake or you see a bear, right? Our eyes start to dilate so that we have better long distance vision. Because like if you see a bear, you are dialed on it, right? Like your vision is very clear. You're paying attention to where that danger is. We see an increase in our heart rate and in our blood pressure. We are going to see our airways open up so we can receive more oxygen. We are sending blood flow to our skeletal muscles, so to our arms and to our legs, so we can either fight this bear or run away from this bear. It shuts down non-essential systems like digestion and reproduction, because if there is a bear, your body's like, yeah, we don't have to worry about babies right now, and yep, I don't care about digesting food. We're just gonna stop those. And then, of course, an increase in sweat. Okay, so that's if it's short term, like you see a snake, you see a spider, you get that initial jump in your heart rate, you almost get in a car accident, right? Those kinds of things. However, when this is chronic, when we are stuck in that fight or flight, which so many of us are, we are in a state where like we're constantly playing defense. Okay. And this happens from not eating enough food, not having enough carbs, not enough calories, doing way too much exercise, not sleeping enough. We have low energy. We're skipping meals. We're fasting. We're having caffeine on an empty stomach. We've got family stress and financial stress and work deadlines, and your kids are driving you crazy. And maybe you're dealing with some grief or some trauma, or you're recovering from a surgery. All of these things, they start to accumulate, right? And we're just stuck in this chronic state of stress, despite you being like, I'm fine. It was worse before. I'm okay. No, you're not. You're not. So when we're in this chronic state, what we see is our sex hormones get tanked. Progesterone cannot be produced in the presence of stress. So our progesterone drops pretty quickly. And when that happens, we see typically a lot of fluid retention and sudden weight gain, very common. We see estrogen really struggles to be produced. We see low testosterone levels. We see an increase in our core body temperature. So when estrogen goes down, we're more sensitive to that. So now we're having way more hot flashes, way more night sweats. It lowers our immune function because our body is working on overdrive that our body's just like constantly fighting. So now it's a lot easier for us to get sick. It takes us longer to recover. We start seeing a ton of blood sugar imbalances. And this is an issue already in perimenopause and menopause. As estrogen levels start to go down, we struggle with our blood sugar control. If testosterone is low, we struggle even more. So then if we're in this stress state, we're in an even worse state where even if you're not eating carbohydrates, even if you're not eating food, your body will break down itself from like muscle mass, from like our biceps, our arms, from our gut lining, take it to our liver, which gets broken down into glucose, which is sugar, and dumps it into your bloodstream, regardless if you are eating enough food or not, right? So if you're not eating food, this is what happens. And we want to maintain our muscle mass, right? So, and when we know if we're struggling with blood sugar control, we start having more cravings. We start having more energy crashes. We also see that our thyroid takes a hit. So we see a decrease in our TSH levels. And that means that our body is not telling our thyroid to produce thyroid hormone, which means that we have less T4 being produced, our thyroid hormone, and then less conversion of T4 to T3, which is the thyroid hormone we can actually use. So your body's not sending the signal to your thyroid. Your thyroid isn't producing enough and your body isn't converting enough. And that means you're going to struggle with energy again. It doesn't matter how much you sleep, you still feel freaking exhausted. Your metabolism is going to slow down because your thyroid tells your body how many calories to burn at rest. So when that's low, our body sucks at burning calories, which is obviously going to make it a lot harder for you to lose weight if your body sucks at burning calories. And this happens when that stress response is higher. We are going to see that our liver takes a hit. It has a hard time detoxifying things. So now we're seeing more inflammation, which already happens when estrogen goes down. We are going to see that we start having gut health type issues, more bloating, food sensitivities that we never had. It's a lot on your body. And since our liver isn't able to detox things as well, we see an accumulation in toxins and things that aren't supposed to be in our body anymore, leading to a greater inflammatory response, which also affects our blood sugars negatively. We also see that we have brain fog and cognitive issues. We can't focus or we're very forgetful. We start having mood swings or we're irrationally reactive. We're very irritable. There's more instances of anxiety and depression, which happens when estrogen goes down. This is very common. A lot of women going through perimenopause and menopause get diagnosed with anxiety and depression, but that's because estrogen is really good at buffering that. So you might not actually be depressed. It's a hormone issue, okay? And it can also really interfere with our wake-sleep cycle because if you think about it, if you're in fight or flight and we're worried about the zombie apocalypse, I use this analogy all the time, you're not having a good deep sleep, right? Because you're kind of sleeping with one eye open because you're nervous. A zombie could come in and get you. So it's not a restful sleep. And that's really what happens when we're in this high stress state. So that's the fight or flight side of things where most of us are living. Most of you can relate to some of those hormonal symptoms and gut health issues and blood sugar issues and all these things that are happening despite you not really changing much to your diet or exercise, right? All of a sudden you start having these issues. It's because you've been in a high stress state for too long. And then as soon as our hormones start to decline, we lose that buffer for our stress. So before we could handle a 9 out of 10, before we started seeing all these symptoms, now we can only handle a 5 out of 10 because estrogen isn't there to buffer it. So now we're battling weight gain and feeling terrible. And then we're doing more things that further push us into fight or flight, like cutting calories, cutting carbs, doing a bunch of cardio, fasting, right? All those things are going to increase that stress response, which is actually going to make things worse. But we keep pushing and pushing and pushing because we think that somehow we're going to have better energy and stuff like that if we eat even less when we're already stressed. It's not how this works. So that's one side of the nervous system. Then we have our parasympathetic nervous system, and this is the rest, digest, recover side, okay? This is where our body feels safe and it functions optimally and we feel good, We have better close-up vision, our heart rate is lower, digestion is good, we're not struggling with bloating and constipation, our blood sugars are balanced, we're not seeing a ton of inflammation in our body, our libido is better, we feel more calm, more grounded, our hormone levels are good, they're balanced with each other, we're just more consistent, more stable. So out of those two nervous system sides, which one do you think you are? Do you think you're in the fight or flight, or are you in the nice, relaxed, no digestion issues, rest and digest side of your nervous system? It's very rare I talk to a woman who's actually in the rest and digest portion of their nervous system. They're predominantly stuck in fight or flight. So that's kind of how, those are the two options our body kind of gets to choose from based on the signals it's receiving from your body, right? The signals that we're getting from our body, even though you're like, I'm fine. You know that little GIF with like the dog sitting in an office and like everything's on fire and he's like, I'm fine. That is you. Your body is on fire from the inside out and you're just ignoring it. It doesn't work. So the vagus nerve, tying this all back in, has two main functions, the sensory function and the motor function. So the sensory function sends messages from the body to the brain. It plays a role in the throat and ears as well. So remember that because we're going to talk about that later. And motor function has a lot to do with like swallowing, our gag reflexes. It stimulates muscles of the heart to help it like helps lower like our resting heart rate, which is an indication of like, good health, which is why nervous system control is so important. And one of the other jobs is to help stimulate involuntary muscle contractions in the digestive tract to help keep movement going along. Okay, so vagus nerve is important for heart rate, for digestion. Okay, most of us are not doing so hot in those areas, right? And the vagus nerve represents the main component of that rest and digest portion of our nervous system, which is important for good mood and feeling relaxed and having energy and sleeping well and, immune functions. So we don't get sick as often. We recover quicker. Our digestion is good. We're not struggling with any bloating or constipation. Our heart rate is in a nice, healthy range. We're at a lower risk of cardiovascular disease if we have good vagal tone. So again, this should all be tying in why stress is so important for health and our hormones. So as I mentioned earlier, that vagus nerve communicates with every major organ system in our body. Okay, it plays a role in specific jobs within a lot of our organ systems. So for example, in the cardiovascular system, it plays a role in our heart rate and our blood pressure. We know that when estrogen goes down, we start to see issues with our cardiovascular system. We're at increased risk of developing chronic conditions, which is why vagal tone, having a nice healthy vagus nerve, is so important. Digestion, motility in your microbiome. So having a good microbiome helps with digestion, absorbing nutrients, not having the bloating, not having indigestion, not having constipation or the runs. Again, very important to have good vagal tone for this. The liver, important for detoxification and glucose homeostasis, which will help you with your blood sugar control, which will help you get rid of toxins in your body, excess hormones, so we're not having hormonal imbalances. So again, very important. Respiration, your breathing rate. We know that people with a lower breathing rate are going to have better health outcomes. They're also going to be more in that rest and digest portion of their nervous system. Your brain, when you are in more of that rest and digest portion of your nervous system and your vagal tone is good, you're going to have better focus, better memory. You're going to have more sound sensitivity, and falling asleep and staying asleep is a lot easier when we have good vagal tone. And these all sound like issues that we start to struggle with during perimenopause and menopause, correct? Yes. So of course, I'm going to tie this back to stress because the vagus nerve is part of that nervous system, right? So we know that stress is your body's reaction to any change that requires an adjustment or a response. And we know that stress can come from our environment, our body, our food, our thoughts, chemicals, right? And our vagal nerve also plays a role in the cognitive and emotional centers in our brain. So it plays a huge role in your stress management, your brain function, and your mood. Stress is in the eye of the beholder, right? I'm fine, everything's fine. But what is perceived as stress for one person, or who we were pre-menopause, is different than what our body perceives as stress now and what we can actually handle. We know that our body cannot tell the difference between psychological and physical stress. Our body has the exact same response to stress, regardless if it's like what you're telling yourself, emotional stress, physical stress from not eating, from not sleeping, from doing too much exercise, to feeling not worthy and having negative self-talk. All of these things trigger the exact same response in your body. It does not matter. Your body just perceives it as stress and will always react the same. Okay. And when our stress becomes chronic, we start to really experience those negative side effects. Like we're exhausted all of the time. We start struggling with anxiety. We can't sleep. We try to go to bed and like we feel exhausted, but our brain just won't shut off. Or we wake up between like 2 to 5 a.m. These are all signs that you're struggling with chronic stress and we need to do something about it. But yet we keep underfueling ourselves. We keep doing a ton of exercise because somehow that's supposed to take stress off of our body and make us healthier. No. So you can kind of think of like your vagus nerve almost like a on-off switch. Okay, so it's able to take us from like the doing position or the off and rest side, so fight or flight would be on, doing. The parasympathetic rest and digest is more of like the off resting position. And our vagal tone, which I referred to a couple times already, refers to your vagus nerve's ability to switch between on, fight or flight, and off to rest and digest. So when we spend a lot of time in our parasympathetic or our rest and digest portion of our nervous system, our vagus nerve is strong. Okay, so we think of it as good vagal tone, almost like muscle tone, strong, fit, healthy, right? And just like exercise, we need to stimulate that vagus nerve. We need to exercise it because it's not going to get stronger on its own, right? It's just like a muscle that way. But as we experience like a lot of prolonged stress, our vagal tone can get weaker and weaker and weaker. Just like if you don't work out, if you don't lift weights, you're probably going to lose some muscle mass. You're going to lose some muscle tone. You're not going to be as fit, right? You're not going to be as strong. And what can happen is that we get stuck in that on position where we're just always in fight or flight. And that's not good for you. We need to try and teach your body how to turn it off, how to move into rest and digest. Take time there. So we can look at how our stress response can make us feel both like mentally and physically, because that's important. So I want to start by looking at the mental stress response first. So we have 4 main mental stress responses. The first is that parasympathetic rest and digest portion of your nervous system. When we are in that rest and digest state, we can feel, calm, safe, stable, resilient. Stress kind of rolls off our back, right? And we know that not all stress is bad. Some stress can be good, like exercise, right? It's short-term stress where, it's like creative and we're motivated and we're optimistic and joyful, but there can be too much and then it becomes the not so great form of stress. If we find ourselves in that state where we are in that chronically stressed state, this is where we're nonstop doing. I had my therapist tell me this. She's like, you are too much of a doer and you need to relax. And I'm like, I know. It's hard though, right? It's challenging. But this is where like, if it gets away from us when we're doing too much, this is where we start to feel like anxious or panicky. We can be angry, worried, emotionally reactive, irritable. We're wired but exhausted, right? That wired and tired feeling. And if that just continues on and on and on and on, we enter that state of like burnout, where it is no longer just, I don't want to do it anymore, but it's more, I can't do it anymore. And this is where you end up feeling like exhausted. You're like kind of feeling like you're in despair. Maybe there's feelings of isolation and depression, pessimism, like you're trapped, like there's no hope. And that can be tough to come out of. So this is where like we need to realize that when we're feeling this way, it's our body's way of telling us we need to stop. Like this is too much, but we're very good at ignoring our bodies, right? So that's the mental side of things. Now we can look at the physical side of things. So when we are in that rest and digest portion of our nervous system, we are optimized. And this is where everything in our body is actually functioning optimally. And if you're listening to this podcast, I'm assuming you don't feel like your body is functioning at an optimal level right now, right? Maybe this is where your heart rate and your blood pressure are good. We're sleeping well. We don't get sick very often. We recover more quickly. Digestion is great. We're not struggling with bloating. Our hormones are balanced with each other, so we're not having hormonal symptoms. Our blood sugar is good. Our brain and memory feel great. And we have exercise resiliency. Like we recover well from workouts and we're getting results from workouts. If you're not, you're probably in a little bit overstressed state, right? So in periods of stress, that momentary stress, right? Like we can experience a little bit of sleep disturbances, maybe some irritability, heartburn, some irritable bowel perhaps. Appetite can go down. We might have headaches, like a little bit like nervous energy, feeling a little bit tense. But we can do exercise and we're still recovering okay, but this might be more like, you're nervous or like stressed about a presentation at work coming up, right? So your sleep might be affected. You're a little bit anxious. That's a short-term stressor, right? And then we're supposed to go back to that wonderful rest and digest portion of our nervous system. But most of us just never go back. We had something happen and we just never went back, right? So then that stress becomes chronic again and we start to experience a lot of physical symptoms of like brain fog. We cannot focus. We're very forgetful. Blood pressure goes up. We all of a sudden have high cholesterol, which is also an issue when estrogen goes down, by the way. We have food sensitivities that we never had issues with before. We might have like GERD, trouble falling asleep or staying asleep. We wake up not feeling well rested. We have a weaker immune function. So again, we're getting sick a lot easier. Recovery takes longer. This is also where we start to see see it reflect in our skin. So we start having acne that we never used to have, or rashes come out of nowhere. We have more inflammation and thyroid issues. Our thyroid markers go down. Exercise starts to feel exhausting, like you're just tired. You don't feel great after. Recovery takes longer. We're not feeling very energized. And this is where we really start to see our like energy crashes in the afternoon start to take place as well. And then when we're there for too long, right, what happens is some not so great responses, right? Like this is where we see people's blood pressure just start to tank all of a sudden. Irregular heart rhythms. So you might be having like palpitations, right? Weight gain, salt cravings, insomnia, a lot of symptoms related to low thyroid function, like low body temperature and hair loss. In this state, our metabolism is just crap, to be honest. So our body's just not good at burning calories. It makes it really hard to lose weight, or you start gaining weight very easily, right? And we're typically going to be experiencing some high blood pressure, high cholesterol, high blood triglycerides as well in this stage too, right? So I think from comparing both the emotional and physical side, a lot of us can relate to, oh, I'm definitely not in that rest and digest portion of my nervous system. I'm definitely stuck in that on doing like fight or flight type response. Okay. The other thing that's important to know about this vagus nerve is it plays a really big role in our appetite and our digestion through a few different mechanisms that I do want to touch on here because I think it's important to understand how much that influences things. So there are cells in our body that respond to ghrelin and leptin. So these are our hunger hormones and our satiety hormones, the hormones that make us feel full and satisfied. And they are found near the vagal mucosal linings, the vagus nerve receptors in our gut. And they control the signals that the gut sends to our brain. This plays a huge role in regulating our food intake and our hunger and fullness cues. Our gut microbiota. The vagus nerve picks up information from the gut microbiome. And it sends that information to our nervous system. And this is that's the makeup of our gut microbiome will influence the type of cravings that we have as well. So the stress can really throw that off. And that's why you start having cravings and why you're more hungry or never hungry, or why you have the thing and it's not very satisfying and then you're still looking for more snacks. And then we also have this hormone called CCK, and its job is to help regulate functions in our GI tract. And it's like slowing down how quickly our stomach empties. So our vagal fibers will take messages from the stomach to the brain from those CCK receptors. So it has such a big influence on cravings, the type of foods that we want, if we're full, if we're hungry, if we're not hungry, because our body, like this vagus nerve, is taking so much information. And again, like we all think it's like, oh, lack of willpower and stuff, but you're just really not setting yourself up for success because you're stuck in this stress state, which is sabotaging all of your weight loss efforts and your hormones, which is not what we want, right? So how can we measure this vagal tone? Because now I'm sure most of you are like, okay, I'm clearly stuck in fight or flight. I need some help. I need some support. But how do I know where I'm at, right? Because we always want to know where you're starting. So vagal tone is the way that we describe the activity of our vagus nerve. So how strong that vagus nerve is, right? So we think of like vagal tone, think of like muscle tone, how active and strong is that vagus nerve for us, allowing us to tap into that rest and digest portion of our nervous system. So it really tells us how good is our body at turning off fight or flight. For most of us, it's not so great, right? And it's measured by our body's ability to regulate heart rate. This is one of the best ways to do it, through heart rate variability. And I'll nerd out a little bit here. I did this as part of my master's dissertation and my research that I did. I worked with kids with hypoplastic left heart syndrome. They were born with half a heart, and we wanted to measure nervous system activity, and we used heart rate variability this way. So understanding stress in the nervous system and how it impacts your body is something I've always been very interested in, obviously. It's very, very cool. I really like it. So here's a little bit about heart rate variability, because there are some fitness trackers that do measure that for you, right? So heart rate variability is the amount that the heart rate fluctuates between inhalation, so breathing in, which is when it naturally is supposed to speed up, and exhalation, breathing out, when it's naturally supposed to slow down. So if you're someone who's like having a hard time regulating your heart rate, focusing on exhaling and slowing down that exhale can do wonders for getting you to get back in control of your breath and of your heart rate. When we have a high heart rate variability, that means that we have a good, strong vagal tone. Okay, so a higher heart rate variability, or HRV, is associated with that rest and digest portion of our nervous system. Greater general fitness, great recovery, better health, lower stress. If we have a low heart rate variability, we are stuck with low vagal tone. So it's not a strong, fit tone muscle. So this vagus nerve isn't toned, which means we're stuck in that fight or flight. We have a lot of stress or illness, or we're recovering for something. So HRV is very cool to pay attention to changes over time if that is something that you're tracking, because If it drops, you know that you're experiencing more stress and you probably need to eat more, you need to focus on your recovery more for optimal health, because otherwise, like we talked about, you start experiencing all those negative side effects, which are catastrophic to your hormones and your health, right? And your waistline. So it's also important to note that HRV is going to differ so much person to person. So do not compare yourself to someone else. Pay attention to how it changes over time for you. Okay. So here are some signs of like weaker vagal tone, or that you are, you're more stuck in that fight or flight, aside from all the crazy symptoms we talked about. But here's some pretty solid good ones that you can think about. So monotone voice, constant throat clearing, because remember we talked about the vagus nerve is very intricately associated with your throat. Constant swallowing, a very sensitive gag reflex, difficulty regulating your emotions, so it's almost like more reactive, you don't feel in control, indecisiveness, chronic inflammation, difficulty concentrating or brain fog. You find yourself in those fight or flight or freeze type of reactions when, you're put into certain circumstances or situations, or if you're someone who struggles with IBD or IBS. So now that we talked about that, most of us are probably struggling with vagal tone in some way, shape, or form. What can you do to improve it? How can we flex that vagus nerve muscle, right? Like, how can we do this to help reduce your stress, to decrease your anxiety and anger, to lower your inflammation and your cortisol levels, and to allow your body to heal, to bring your hormones back up, to make your body good at burning calories again? How can we do this? Well, here is your handy dandy little toolkit. And we do have this guide in our Facebook community, so make sure you join if you haven't. It's a free place where you can have access to the over 300 guides that we have now. We have over 150 webinars in there. It is just a place for education. So if you want these things and the printouts and stuff like that, or things saved, join our Facebook community. It's in the link in the show notes. So here are 8 really good things that you can start doing that can help, okay? The first one is sleep, which everyone's gonna be like, ugh, someone else tells me I need to get more sleep. I've tried that. I don't know how to do it, right? You can't have optimal health without having optimal sleep. Doesn't happen, okay? You can try all of the things in the world, but if you are not improving your sleep, you are not gonna have optimal results. So this is where, having a nice bedtime routine where you can, lower your heart rate, lower your breathing, making sure that you're, eating enough food to lower your stress response to allow you to sleep better, having a bedtime snack. That's a huge one, where having some carbs before bed paired with protein or fat will actually help lower your cortisol levels, will increase your melatonin production naturally so your body can produce that sleepy time hormone. It allows you to manage your cortisol and blood sugars throughout the night, so you're not waking up from a cortisol spike and a blood sugar drop, to help you get better sleep. So this can be things like toast with peanut butter is a great option. Just make sure it's a higher fiber bread. You can have even toast with egg. You can have popcorn and a turkey pepperoni stick, oatmeal with protein powder, or the protein drinks. I like to use those. You can do yogurt with some protein powder in it, or the higher protein, granolas, but using a Greek yogurt or Icelandic yogurt, it's a great option. You can do those protein bites that are with oats and peanut butter, things like that. Meat, cheese, and crackers. There are so many options for a great bedtime snack. Have that 30 to 90 minutes before bed, depending on how big of a snack you're having. Only has to be 150 to 250 calories. Nothing super big, but it's something we encourage all women in our program to do, and it does wonders for their sleep. It's amazing. We actually had a woman in our challenge post, because she tracks her sleep, and she posted pictures, and it was bedtime snack versus no bedtime snack. And in the bedtime snack one, she was in bed for 8 hours and 20 minutes, and she slept for 7 hours and 43 minutes. So fell asleep quickly, stayed asleep, amazing. The one where she didn't have her bedtime snack, she was in bed for 8 hours and 50 minutes or something. Like she was in bed for quite a bit longer, and she only slept 7 hours. So she was in bed for almost an hour more and almost slept an hour less because she didn't have that bedtime snack. So it's very interesting to see. And if you can track this stuff over time, it's amazing. And I love it. So sleep, number one, very important. Sleep hygiene is huge. Number two, breathing. So square or box breathing. This is a 4-7-8 breathing. So this is where you breathe in for 4 seconds, hold, and then breathe out for like 7 to 8 seconds. For the box breathing, it's in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4, and doing it that way. But just focusing on slowly breathing out. Remember how I talked about that your heart rate variability is going to be at its highest when we at its lowest when we are exhaling. Vagal activity is going to be better when we are exhaling. So as you breathe out, we're going slowly. That's going to be really good. In fact, this is something Navy SEALs, who are like one of the fittest people on the planet, right? Fit population. They're required to do this like 4 times a day to do the box breathing. So if the elite need it to like control their stress and their health, it's probably something that you can implement too. The next one is cold water. Doesn't have to be cold plunges. I will never do that because it just doesn't seem enjoyable and I just don't want to. But if you want to do cold plunges, you can. However, you can just put an ice pack on the back of your neck. Cold water splashed on your face or over both wrists. Or just when at the end of your shower, just switch to cold for like 5 seconds and then get out. Like it doesn't have to be this fancy cold plunge stuff. You don't have to do that. It's not necessary. There are other ways to get benefits. Movement. This is a great one. Strength training workouts, 2 to 3 days per week, full body. Okay, this is really, really great for improving stress resiliency, but we're focusing on getting stronger. We're taking longer rest periods. Doing like your daily step goals is really great. Doing yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi. So lower intensity where your heart rate isn't high all of the time in your workout. Really, really great for your vagal tone. Voice and music. So singing, humming, laughing, gargling, all of these things can actually really help stimulate your vagus nerve. This is something that Coach Hannah does with some of her clients, is they'll do feet up on the wall because that will also help improve your vagal tone because it brings blood flow from your legs. So when you're fight or flight, blood goes to your arms and legs to fight the bear, run away from the bear. So if you're laying on the floor or your bed, feet up on the wall, it helps bring that blood flow back to your gut to help with digestion, lowers your heart rate, lowers your breathing rate, improves digestion, brings down your cortisol levels. So if you're pairing that with like humming for like 2 to 5 minutes, it can do actual wonders for you, which sounds kind of wild, but I swear it works. Gratitude and appreciation is another one. This is something that I used to do quite often back when I was going through a really hard time in my life, especially after my mom had passed away. And it was something that like I made myself list off what were 3 good things about today, because it is so easy to spiral and catastrophize. And because you had one bad moment in your day or a couple things that went wrong, we just hyper fixate on those things and lose sight of the bigger picture, the progress that we've made, all the blessings that we actually have in our life. And like I said, remember your body doesn't know the difference between physical stress and emotional stress, cognitive stress, psychological stress, right? Our body responds the same way. And so if we're always stuck in that negative cycle of like, I'm not there yet, or this sucks, that sucks, and we just like, again, we just spiral, like we're still having that stress response despite all the other things that we're doing. So giving yourself time to like have some gratitude and appreciation for the things that are going well in your life, the things that you are grateful for, that you consider blessings, that can make such a huge, huge difference. So this can be like doing some journaling or just like talking about it with your partner at the end of the day, whatever that looks like. Because in this day and age, it's so easy to spiral. So easy. The next one is nature. This one's really overlooked, but like it's super important. Like you talk to people who go to the mountains, or this is why like it feels great to have your feet in the grass or in the sand or be in the lake, right? Nature has this natural calming effect on us and improves your vagal tone. It'll improve your stress response, your hormones, everything, right? So making sure that you are able to get outside when you need to, or as often as you can, even if just 5 to 10 minutes, can go such a long way. Like I love sitting outside, even if it's not that sunny, if there's a light breeze and I can like hear the trees rustling and I can feel the wind in my hair, my face, like it's so soothing. And that brings you into that grounded rest and digest portion of your nervous system that we all just never get to experience anymore. And the other thing is mindfulness. So doing like meditations if you want to, I really struggle with that, but doing a body scan, like pay attention to where are you holding tension in your body? Can you actively relax those areas? Because we don't realize how tense and stressed we are unless we like, check in every now and then. And so there's one more thing that I do want to talk about here is that there is a connection between activities that release oxytocin, our love hormone, and our vagus nerve. So anything that releases oxytocin is going to improve our vagal tone, right? So reduce stress. So this is why activities like face-to-face connection is so important. Like the internet's amazing nowadays, but we need FaceTime with people. It's different. Petting your dog, cuddling your animals, right? Like that releases oxytocin. Cuddling with a loved one. These are all things that can really help improve your heart rate variability, strengthen your vagal tone, lower your stress. You don't even realize it. Like whenever I do feet up, my dog Merlin is almost always laying on my stomach. Like it's just a little extra love and it's just so nice. In 2010, there was a study published in the Biological Psychiatry journal that found that adults who possessed higher levels of vagal tone increased in connectedness and positive emotions more rapidly than others. So if you are in a place where you're not constantly in fight or flight, it's easier to have connections with people. It's greater to have positive relationships with people. It's just a lot easier. And when we're connected with people and we're able to, express how we're feeling and communicate that's you're going to be healthier. It's all encompassing. Okay. When we support that vagus nerve during perimenopause and menopause, or even the years leading up to it to help support us through that transition, it can really help balance our autonomic nervous system. Okay. When we do this, our body's ability to switch from fight or flight to rest and digest, it improves so much. And that helps lower our cortisol levels, which we know are going to impact everything. So that'll help improve our hormonal balance and our hormone levels. It'll help improve our gut health and digestion, our thyroid function, our blood sugar control, our liver health. There's so many things that it will help with. But we're all just stuck in this hustle culture, go, 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 that we don't stop and think about how is this actually implicating your health, right? How do we work out properly, So the key to keeping your vagal tone strong is to practice these activities regularly. Make sure that you're eating enough food, that you're having enough carbohydrates, that we're focusing on healing your body. We're working out the right way. We're doing some breath work. We're doing some mindfulness or gratitude journaling or whatever that looks like. We're laughing. We're socializing. We're exercising in a way that supports all of that to help stop that stress response before it even gets started. Like a lot of the time people tell me, oh man, like I wish I was this size again. I was so much happier then. But when you look back, usually it's because you were doing things that supported your vagal tone, that decreased your stress, that allowed your body to be healthy and function optimally. So it was easier to lose weight. It was easier to maintain your weight. You weren't struggling with hormonal symptoms at that time, right? Because you were enjoying your life and you were laughing and socializing and had good relationships and connectedness. It wasn't so hard to be as grateful, right? We had different stressors back then. So we need to take a minute and really look back and understand, okay, maybe I was happier at that weight, but it wasn't because of that weight in particular. It was because I had all these other things and I was able to tap into that rest and digest portion of my nervous system. And most of us are not in that state right now, right? So like I mentioned, we do have a guide with these things. If you want it, it is housed in our Facebook community. Please go check it out. There are so many free resources there. It is, I want to say it's almost overwhelming sometimes. There's so much stuff in there, but once you're in there, if you're looking for something in particular, like you can message and we'll tag you in it so you can see all the other stuff. But yeah, if you guys need anything, please let me know. Many of you are not subscribed, so please subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. So subscribe, join our Facebook community. If you need anything, let me know. Love you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.